Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of our bonus series, the BPD Brunch, where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm Xannie, and today I'm here with Solène, Alex, and Andrea. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
What's your brunchy beverage for the day? My husband just brought me this gigantic coffee.
Cheers.
Keeping it
Sparkling
simple.
water.
Coffee.
Yes. Cheers, everyone.
So on our main episode this week, we talked a little bit about our experiences with self-harm and suicidal ideation. And a lot of the times we play games on these episodes, but we thought it would be a little bit insensitive to turn like self-harm and suicidal ideation into a game. So instead, today we're going to talk about effective means of communication with people who are really struggling.
I feel like a big piece of, what to say to someone that is going through something like this is actually don't say anything, which sounds really strange, and I'm open to other people's opinion. But for me, it's like actually listen and ask open-ended questions. We want to fix. So the person is going through something. We're like, okay, what can I, so we try to say things or do things. But actually, most of the time is like stop and ask and listen and hold that space before you try and help and fix. Because a lot of the time, well, I don't know about you, but a lot of the time we deep down know some of the things we can do to help ourselves. And what we need, rather than someone saying, oh, you should do this, you should take a hot bath. You should be grateful because there's so much to be grateful for in your life. Yes, and you can also feel like shit at the same time as having lots to be grateful for.
It's funny, you mentioned taking a hot bath, which is a coping skill. And I think one of the important things that you bring up is context is really, really important. I feel like there's night and day difference between me telling someone, here are some of the things that I know help me deal with it. If you can remind me of them when I'm having a hard time, that would be really helpful. Versus somebody giving you completely unsolicited advice. Yeah. Especially the context of the relationship, right? Like sometimes people find out about this stuff and you really don't know them that well, or you don't have a relationship that's based on like mutual support or whatever. And for some reason, they feel like it's their place to tell you what to do with it. At least for me, because I'm so sensitive, I always have my defenses up. And so when somebody, without being asked, is like, here's a list of all the things you can do, it's like whether or not they work, if it's not really your place in the relationship to give that advice, it's very invalidating. Especially if I haven't said, like, I need help, I almost feel more shame because they're like, well, clearly you need advice. That's sort of how I interpret it. And I realize that people are well-intentioned, but one of the things I think in outside of this context of psychological disorders, just in life in general, is if people ask, can I give you my 2 cents about this? And if the answer is no, respect that.
Or the answer could be not now as well. I think you mentioned a lot about trust, right? Is there trust in the relationship? Is there that psychological safety for the conversation to be had? I was going to ask you actually, do you think it also depends on who? Like, if it's your therapist or your husband or, random Joe blogs on the street?
I think trust is the main thing there. Like, because I've had therapists I did not trust because I did not feel seen by them. And it doesn't mean that they didn't give me some good suggestions, but I just did not trust them, so I didn't take anything that they said. My therapist now can say the exact same things, and because we have a strong bond of trust and I really feel seen by her, I take what she says seriously. I don't know if I can say like blanket, like here are people, but I think trust is probably the key.
I think it also depends on what works for that person. If you're trying to come to someone and you're like, go take a hot shower, like you'll be okay. Like there's some moments where it's like that's really helpful if that is one of your like built-in coping mechanisms. Like I've had in the past people like hearing me crying, they've come to my door with like a bowl of ice water, and that's been like one of the most like really helpful things. Even if in the moment I'm like, no, I don't want to do that, sometimes in that moment you need a little bit of push, especially if your emotions are like really, really high, and it's like it shows that you care a lot. it's helpful sometimes to just show up with a bag of ice, or like, what can I do for you in this moment? Instead of telling someone what to do, like that, what can I do for you?
It's a lot about the how, isn't it? Because if someone comes with the bowl of ice and said, I think you should really do this right now. Like, you would be like, what do you know? But if someone comes and says, I'm not sure really how to help, but I thought this might be helpful. Is there anything else I can do? That's very different, but actually the action is the same.
I like that you brought that up, because I actually have encountered one person with both sides. I was told by my therapist originally, if you have that feeling that it's coming on, maybe let them know, hey, I'm starting to feel this way. This argument's getting out of hand. Let's take it somewhere else. So I would start to vocalize it. Hey, this is kind of taking me to a negative place. If we continue this, I probably will self-harm, and it would turn into oh, I don't care. I don't care if you do that. You're just doing that for attention. And it would be really intense, because if anything, it would just make me want to act out more. But over time, I think that person just started to decide okay, there's really something going on here, and I think I need to learn more about it. And, now it's kind of okay, I don't understand what's wrong, and I don't know how to help you. So if you can tell me what to do, let me know, and I can tell there's still that restriction from them, because they still don't really know what to do, and they have a hard time with empathy. But it's interesting to see kind of both sides.
Yes, one of the things that you're making me think about, because you're talking about the doing it for attention, right? I think for some people, when they say you're doing it for attention, maybe what they really mean is that when you hurt yourself, I don't like how that makes me feel. You're grabbing my attention in a way that makes me really uncomfortable, and so I'm going to call that out. I think people sometimes, because they don't know how to handle the emotional response that comes up in them, because they're not used to it. I mean, most people don't deal with this in their life, right? Maybe this is an opportunity for people, if you're on the outside, if some of these negative emotions come up for you, there's nothing wrong with talking to someone yourself, getting in touch with your own emotions, learning to identify those feelings in yourself. And so when someone else is hurting themselves, instead of calling them out or, saying you're manipulative or attention seeking or whatever, you can be more observational and descriptive of what's happening, and saying, when you behave like this, I feel really helpless and hopeless and all these other things. And it's observe, describe language, which is, stuff that's in DBT, but that's stuff that I think everyone can really benefit from, is really paying attention to that. And so many people aren't used to it, but I think if you have someone in your life who's an important person who has BPD, I think just learning some of that basic stuff of getting in touch with your own emotions will really help them, not only to communicate with them, but also model that.
I think something that's also really important is that we're able to express that we need some space too. We learn in therapy that we need to pause. We need to add that pause in there so that it doesn't get worse. And what makes it really difficult is when you are in a conflict with someone who doesn't allow you to take that space. And it's really difficult. I guess you get it. I've been in relationships with people who, if I say I need space and I walk out of the room, they just they're continuing to yell and say mean things, and it's just it's not helpful. Taking that space is so important for everyone involved. Everyone's emotions get heightened. We all need to calm down so we can have this rational conversation to talk about how we feel and to communicate much better. So it's that's something that I would give to advice to someone, that if someone asks for space, give them space. Don't judge them. Don't say oh, you're walking away. How dare you walk away? Give them that space. That's what they were taught in therapy to do. So let them do that.
I'm just
so resonating. Yes, same.
No, I
walk away.
Yes.
But communicating that is really important. Saying, not just walking away, but saying, I need space. Even just saying quickly, I need space.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I need space. I will come back. I think that even on the reverse side, when we're feeling like we're afraid of being abandoned. If the person says, I need to go now, I think we need just to press pause and then, you know, I will come back. That for me is really reassuring. I think the other thing that I find really, really hard is if people completely ignore it. I don't know if you've ever come across that. For me, it was a lot growing up. So if I'm having kind of like a, you know, what would be referred to for a child as a tantrum, although for me, in my humble opinion, was much more than that, but it would just be completely ignored. So it'd be like, oh yeah, you know, or just, oh, there she goes again. Or maybe just go to your room. It'll be better tomorrow. Just, you know, and that is really hard as well. And then of course it's even worse, right? Because what do you do then? You know, what is the escalation point? How far do you go? Because you feel like, when you said, Xannie, like, people say, oh, you're doing it for attention. And in a way, I want to, when you were saying that, I was like, yes, of course. Why do you think I'm doing it? I'm doing this because I want you to tell me that you love me, that you've seen me, that you heard me, that you're going to be here for me, and that everything, you know, we've got this because you're here and I'm here, and, you know, we're going to get through it. Like, yes, ignoring can also be really, really hard. So just saying, you know, I'm not ignoring you. I just think we both need space. I will be back and we'll sort this out. Like, yes.
I put up a post on my Instagram like a while ago that was like, yeah, I'm an attention seeker, so what? The whole idea was that humans are social animals. A lot of things we do are for, you know, loosely attention, because we're trying to say things to each other, right? So, and in our previous episode, in the main episode, we talked about sort of the different functions of self-harm. And it isn't always about interpersonal things, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it is about communicating something to other people, but it's not like arbitrary, right? We're trying to communicate pain and suffering and loneliness and shame and guilt and all these things. So it's not just like, I'm trying to control you for no other reason than I want control. It's like, I want you to see me. I'm hoping that if you recognize how much I am hurt, then we can connect on some level where I won't feel alone anymore.
I like it putting it that way more than saying attention so much as saying I want to feel seen, I want to feel understood. Like I want to feel like Solène said it, like feeling loved and cared about, and like you understand my pain. But it's interesting because, so yes, like we don't want people to walk away and just not come back. I also think that with that, like if someone just walks away without saying anything, it's really harmful, and just ignoring us can be really harmful. But it's interesting because like behaviorally, like in DBT, like they want people to not respond to you. Like if you're threatening self-harm, the best is for someone to not respond, because that is what is reinforcing that behavior. So it is hard because okay, I'm on both sides of this. Like from on the side of having BPD, and when things were really bad, I always wanted that person to respond to me. Like if they ignored me, I would be pissed and get more upset, but I was forced to regulate myself. And then if they come to me, you're never going to learn how to regulate yourself. There's like a very two-sided thing here. Like it's so badly do we want that person to pay attention to us and give us that attention, but it's also really important kind of for them not to in some cases.
What I would say the key difference is that you don't want to reinforce the things that you don't want to see, but you also have to reinforce the things you do want to see. Meaning, if someone's default is just to always kind of ignore you, that is a problem. You know, if basically, unless you're acting the way that they want you to 100% of the time, if they're just going to ignore you, that is very invalidating, very problematic, and it creates a lot of long-term issues. My husband and I have worked really hard on reinforcement. I think in terms of not reinforcing, rather than ignoring and walking out, I think one of the things that's really helped us is he will stay present, he will stay there, but he won't have an emotional reaction. We'll talk about it, right? Like he'll say, I understand that you're really upset and I'm not going to solve your problems for you. I think directly communicating that is, at least in my experience, more effective than somebody actually just walking out, because it's hard to infer the right lessons sometimes. But when he explicitly is like, you are an adult woman, I'm going to support you, you have to also be able to deal with this yourself, because it cannot be up to me to make you okay. And I think that was much more helpful than just like straight up ignoring.
Right.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, there's definitely a
just
balance.
Communicating before walking out. It's okay to walk, like totally agree also with you, Alex, about sometimes it's necessary to walk out, but it's that communication of saying, you know, I am walking out because XYZ. Or one thing that's my husband's been good at doing is asking what is really going on. When he sees that I go into these levels of emotions, he knows there's more to the picture than, you know, the behavior that I'm having. And so he will say, what's really going on? And that I found really, really helpful and powerful. You can only speak for yourself, right? And that's why this is interesting, because everyone's got different experiences. Maybe it is because also what you've experienced growing up as well, because I suppose for me it was the common response. That is the most invalidating. That is literally walking out or pure silence, just staring at me in silence like this. That is the worst that you can possibly do. I'd rather you say, hey, I can't do this right now, and then walk out, or even say something, you know, what's happening, what can I do to help? If I say nothing, then just walk out, you know?
I will just say that not being reinforced is one of the most painful things too.
Yeah.
Because like early on in my relationship with my husband, I kind of started to become aware of this, and I was like, okay, if you feel like I'm like trying to get you to behave a certain way, like I need you to not react to me. Like if I run off, don't chase after me. I think that's a big one. Like, don't chase after me. And he did it, you know, but it was really painful. You know, he didn't always get it right. It's very difficult to be on the outside and to learn. Like, you have to really pay attention to someone and catch all their verbal and nonverbal communications. And I am extremely lucky that I found someone who was stubborn enough to want to like push through all of that with me, because it is not an easy thing. It's so interesting because we can all interpret very different things from similar situations, or similar things from very different situations. Being a person is hard. Being a person is hard.
Aww. I was gonna say, I think it's actually also interesting when you get the enabler, the one that will always run to you, the one that no matter what's going on with you, what do you need? What can I do? I am here. I will help you feel better. I will bandage your wounds. Like whatever it is that you need, I'm here, you know? Yeah. And I think I've had that person in my life as well. And I didn't realize how enabling that was until they were gone. And it was kind of like, okay, so this is what it's like to not have that. I actually have to sit here with this and actually use my skills. And I don't want to use my skills. And I have to. And I didn't realize how enabled I was from that person.
What do you think would have been more helpful, like from that person? Obviously, they would genuinely care about you. So I'm just trying to think, how do you think, if someone out there is watching and is like, oh yeah, I'm like that with my friend, you know, always helping. So how do you think they could have been
I think
support?
Yeah, I think that it would be better, kind of like with what Xannie was saying about her husband, just kind of, you know, being present with the person versus being there to save the person. Because that's what I feel like what was going on, is that I was always being saved. It wasn't always kind of like, well, what is it that's causing this? Well, what's going on? You know, it was always just like, I'm here and I'm going to fix it.
And everyone's different. Like we talk about, we're all different. And the thing is like sometimes people see BPD and think that we're all the same, you know?
If you're basically open and honest as much as possible, and at the same time don't let everything go, like anything goes, you know, whatever it is, I love you till the end of times, you know, because that is enabling. So it's like having those clear boundaries and having those conversations when we are calm, because we're not always anyone watching, we're not always engaging in, you know, self-harm or problematic behaviors, right? There are a lot of moments of more calm where we can have these conversations where it's like, okay, if, you know, something triggers you, or if I see you engaging in a problematic behavior or something like that, you know, what is something helpful? Or maybe let's agree on some kind of I don't know, safe word or something. You know, it may work for some people, may not work for others, but having that communication in a moment of calm, then when it happens, then you know what's going on. So if the person then says, stop, I can't do this right now, you've agreed that this is a key word or a key moment that helps to kind of, oh yeah, okay, we need to take a pause and we need to kind of, you know, I think that's been key through therapy, because a lot of relationships are really tested through therapy, and I know in a lot of cases like it doesn't work out for various reasons, because we change a lot when we go through therapy, let's be honest. Like even our neural pathways, like our actual brains change, right? So I think what's really helped, at least in my relationships, and not in all, I mean, some of them haven't, you know, resisted that test of time and change, I suppose. But in a lot of them, it's been that open communication of, here's what I'm learning about myself. Here are some things we maybe try because it sounds like it might work. Andrea, what do you think? We haven't heard from you in a bit.
No, I like all of that. I don't know. I'm just kind of like reflecting on just like past like relationships and stuff like that. And just
I'm thinking of a story of yours.
Oh, which one?
Well, I was thinking about, so Andrea, you had someone who you were kind of seeing who, like, because we've been friends for a while, and you would tell me about how, like, when you would try to use some of your things that you learned in therapy, that he would say things like, well, you're just using your therapy BS on me and all this stuff. And it was like, a lot of this has made me thinking about that and how, like, it's really important that whether you agree with it or not, like, if you want to maintain a relationship with someone, like, you need to let them use the things that they're learning in therapy, at least try, and not stand in their way. And if not, like, it would probably be, I mean, this is my personal opinion, but like, I would be much better off if someone who's not going to support my therapy lets that relationship go, because they are holding me back.
I think that with that, like, one of the last times, because I that has happened quite a few times, and like red flags, you know, like hearing people say things like that's probably not the best person that you want in your life, especially when you're going through recovery or in recovery.
Right. It's a hard balance for us too,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like we want to let people have a chance sometimes if they don't know, if they're really willing to work at it. So sometimes like that's where you really have to draw the boundaries, you know, like I think a lot of us, when we are going through like the heights of our BPD, we don't know what boundaries are, and we don't want to respect other people's boundaries too. So it's like, you know, something that I would tell someone who's going through BPD is to, like, as hard as it is, respect someone else's boundaries, because they're doing it for the sake of the relationship and for themselves too. And it's, if we care about someone, we should let them protect themselves, you know?
Yeah, that can be really hard to do also. Yeah.
In terms of like awareness, I think like as a therapist, creating this awareness and kind of understanding the function of the self-harm and threats and things like that. And I also talked about this in the self-harm episode. It's like these different functions that self-harm and suicide and stuff like that can have. Once you understand really why you're doing it, you can start putting something else in place to serve that same function. You know, if you're doing it to try to get support from someone, you know, what you really need to do is learn how to vocalize what you need in that moment. Even in heightened emotion, even when your emotions are like very, very high and it's hard to vocalize, but once you know really what is the purpose of this behavior, then you can really do something about it. You know, like if you are self-harming because your emotions are just too intense and you need to like let it out somehow, then, you know, we've talked about like other kinds of behaviors, like replacement behaviors that are healthier, different skills, like, you know, like tip skills and things like that, like things that can really like replace those behaviors. But then also like if you're doing it to get support, like I said, you know, being able to ask. It also happens so fast usually, you know, when our emotions are so high, everything feels like it's in a split second and you act so quickly. But if you know beforehand what you think is going on here, then you'll know what to do.
I think you bring up a really good point beyond the self-education and the power, whether that's for you as an individual with BPD, for someone who is in a friend, a family member, a partner, to someone with BPD. That's self-education, learning yourself about skills, learning yourself about emotions, learning yourself about self-harm and the function of it, or the function of suicidalization, is so empowering, because then everything starts to make sense and everything starts to be choices and options. And it's like, oh, I could do that, or I could do this. I could self-harm, or I could engage in some healthy behavior that actually helps me. Yay. Or I could, like you said, Alex, communicate to someone what I need, and then they can help me as well. So there's so many options.
There's just such a reward to whenever you think about how long and far in between it's been, oh, it's been this long, or man, or like with the shame, like whenever you actually have done it and you're just kind of like, it's been this long since I've done this. Like, I can't believe I did this.
Right. That's where compassion is so important. Like I for me, it's like, okay, 2 years have gone by and I haven't done anything. And then I did something that I started beating myself up for it. But I was like, you know what? Like, I've gone 2 years without doing anything. Like, this is so little, this is not that big of a deal. Yes, I don't want to do it again, but it's also not something worth beating myself up about.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Beating yourself up just holds on to it even more. It makes it harder to move on and let go.
Yes.
And in this episode, we're talking a lot about almost on the verge of advice, right? So one of the things that I would make really clear, if you are someone on the outside, I don't recommend just like trying things that you hear about on somebody without like talking to them. I think the most important thing is that you have to do what works for your relationships. And everyone who has BPD is different. Like, we may exhibit similar behaviors, but they don't all happen for the same motivations. And the way that we interpret things may not all be the same. So it's really important that if you are doing, self-educating and watching videos like this one, that you really talk to your loved one about it and don't try to force them to do something that they're not ready for. I think one of the hardest things for me was when people would when I was really upset and people would try to reason me back to reality. That was really, really dysregulating, because in those moments, my emotions are like everywhere. I can't even really hear what people are saying to me. Mm-hmm. And so then they try to reason me back to reality. And really what I need in that moment is just a pause, but people don't know that if they don't talk to me about it. And so I guess that's what I say. It's like, everyone out there, you have to make the decisions that you can live with. And it's really important that you have those conversations with the people in your life so that you can do that.
Yeah, it's almost like going full circle to the beginning, listen and ask questions. I think, just refrain from judgment or ignoring or advice, or just listen, ask questions, be curious, what's going on? How can I help? What's been your experience? All these different things. There's so much power in that. Yeah, I love that, Xannie. That was so perfect. And for each other as well. I feel like virtual hugs.
Virtual hugs, everybody.
I love that. I love that there's an emoji for that now, too.
Is there?
There is, yeah.
Well, thank you everybody so much for watching. Hopefully you got a nugget of joy and information there. I don't know why I said joy. A nugget of information that will be useful. And if you like what you see, like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss a video. And we will see you next time. Bye!